Hi, our guests today are folks from Citizens of Milford, Peter Scandone, Steve Trettel, and Joanne DeMaria, who want to talk about the Field of Flags efforts that you guys have at Draper Memorial Park in Milford. And I understand you've got something special for this year's Veterans Day, but Steve, why don't you start off telling us about Field of Flags?
Okay. Well, basically, the whole idea is to flood Draper Park with flags in tribute to our veterans and to our men and women on active duty right now.
And it sure has looked beautiful the past year.
Oh, it's amazing because, you know, the flags are on a 10-foot pole, they're 3 by 5. And the amazing thing about what I found very touching about it is when people are walking around, the relatives, and they're walking around searching for their relative's flag, and they find it, and it's very touching.
It's moving.
It's very, very moving. And I can say, as a veteran myself, I was moved by that whole ceremony last year, very much so.
I can tell you that on Memorial Day, I met a family. It was the wife of a World War II vet who had just passed away.
Yeah.
So that generation. The couple's daughter and the granddaughter, so 3 generations were there looking at the husband, father, and grandfather's flag.
Yeah.
Very moving time talking to them.
I got the chance to last year after the ceremonies. There were still people going around or at the flag that they had sponsored, and the stories I can tell you are very, very touching. You know, their memories of their loved ones, and you know, his service or her service, and what happened to them.
Yeah. So now they've been up for a year already. Did Labor Day mark a year already for the flags being up?
Yes.
So
yes.
it's time to renew.
Time to renew.
And how do people do that?
Okay.
Or
well,
get a new one if they haven't had
I
one.
want to get my notes out so I give
Okay.
accurate information here. Okay. So basically, all area citizens, organizations, and businesses are invited to sponsor a 3 by 5 American flag to fly on a 10-foot staff, as I said, in Draper Park. It's a $60 donation. And that might sound like a lot, but there's an awful lot to it, because each flag will have a yellow ribbon and an attached card with the information on the person being honored, military branch, the years of service, and the sponsor's name. You could honor a veteran, or you can give it in honor of an active duty person in the military right now. So the $60 donation sponsors a flag in Draper Park for 5 patriotic holidays. That's Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Flag Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. We had over 100 flags last year, and we're hoping this year we can exceed that.
No limit to how many people could do.
Because we still have plenty of, I'd love to see that whole park covered with flags. It's so impressive and so meaningful to the folks that had or have people in the military service right now. So I encourage people to simply go to our website, citizensformilford.com, and there's a form on there. You can fill out the form and send it in, or call it in, or whatever, and we will. We're co-sponsoring this together with Salvation Army.
I was going to say this is with the Salvation Army.
Yes.
So
they actually started the thing a while back, and then we came up with the idea of focusing on Draper Park as well.
Well, and that money, the money, the donation goes to the Salvation Army
Yes, it does.
for their support functions of all kinds of things. So
It's a win-win.
it's a win-win.
All around.
It's a win-win.
Now, this Veterans Day, I understand you're going to do some special things that Peter and Joanne are going to talk about. So Peter, what's happening in addition to the flags? Veterans Day is being celebrated on Friday, November 10th by the town of Milford, correct? With
That's
the
right.
parade.
Yep.
The parade ends up at Draper Memorial Park, and then what's going to happen?
Well, again, this year, it's going to somewhat replicate last year, but like you said, there's going to be a couple of additional ceremonies involved. I'll run down the agenda briefly here. We're going to start out with a Pledge of Allegiance. That'll be, John Pillar will start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Then, after the introductions of the dignitaries that'll be in the audience, I'll explain the Medal of Liberty ceremony that we're going to have this year. This is an addition, and I'll drill into that deeper later on in the discussion here.
Okay.
And this year we have 8 recipients killed in action, Milfordians, and following that ceremony, then what happens, well, actually, let me back up. The ceremony itself, I will announce the serviceman's name that was killed in action, and we'll have a uniformed serviceman ring a bell, then we'll have a moment of silence for each serviceman.
Mm-hmm.
The next of kin then will come up and get the Medal of Liberty, and it'll go on like that through all eight recipients. Following that, we'll have the missing man table ceremony.
Which Joanne will tell us
And
about in a few
Joanne is
minutes.
going to explain that with the display that she has here. And part of that is that Vinny Civizzari, he will, and he's I got to get this right, otherwise I've gotten it wrong before for Vinny, but he's a colonel, retired colonel, I believe. And he will say each step of the table, each item that's on the table, and we'll have a fully dressed Marine with white gloves that will place the item on the table, and as Joanne explains the meaning of the symbols. Following that, as we did last year, the Milford High School Marching Band, they'll begin a medley of hymns for each branch of service. And we'll have available for all the veterans in the park. Every veteran in the park will be handed a flag. They can go to the front, and I'll announce where the flags are. I'd like them to take one. And then when their hymn is played, we'd like them to raise the flag when their branch is played. After that, we have a young lady who sings the national anthem. She did a great job last year.
Little tiny petite thing.
Happens to be my granddaughter.
Nice, good call, I remember.
What a voice.
And then following that, I believe Will Kincaid will have a few words to say. I'll turn it over to Steve, and he'll explain the field of flags to the audience and how they can add to it. And then at the very end, taps will be played front, and then it'll be followed by echo taps in the rear. So
I gotta tell you, that was probably the most moving thing. When they played taps last year, we didn't know they were gonna do it. We didn't know the band was gonna do it. And they played it, and then there was an echo from the other side of the park. They did a wonderful job.
very moving.
Peter, can you tell us about the Medal of Liberty? I haven't heard of that before.
Okay. The Medal of Liberty came about in 2009, and there aren't, I don't know of anyone that's heard of it, actually, other than John Pillar, the Veterans Agent of Milford. But and I'll read the chapter of the Mass General Law, and it says that there shall be a Medal of Liberty which shall be awarded to the next of kin of servicemen and women from the Commonwealth killed in action or who died as a result of wounds received in action. And that's kind of a black and white picture of it. And it's a heart-shaped symbolic medal with the gold border. The center of the medal bears the gold star. The top center is the coat of arms of the Commonwealth, and the reverse of it will have the metal top depicts the branch of the service in honored memory of the killed in action serviceman. And it's on a nice ribbon. I believe it'll be in a display box when we hand it out.
And I got to say, I think it's about time that the next of kin gets recognition for their loss. This is long overdue.
I would agree with that.
And Vinny Civizzari, he brought this to my attention during the last Veterans ceremony and said, why don't we look into this? And I said, yeah, and it just, we drilled down into it, and took a lot of work, and I can explain that as we go along here.
And I'd just like to say that it's no easy task finding some of the next of kin of these people that were killed in the 40s. And it takes many phone calls, a lot of reaching out to people in order to find out who was related to who and is still in the area or in another state. I had a conversation the other night with a woman that's in her 80s, and her dad was killed in action when she was 10 years old. She remembered it very well. And just speaking to her, she was just so emotionally filled to think that finally this was going to be done, and she knew nothing about it. So I think a lot of people are going to be very happy.
Okay. Joanne, you're going to tell us about the, it's called a missing man table?
It's called the empty chair ceremony. Yes.
What exactly happens in this? What do the items signify?
Okay. First of all, I'd just like to give a little background. The committee decided to do this to honor those that made the extreme sacrifice so that we could all enjoy our freedoms. Because today, more than 78,000 Americans are still unaccounted for, just from World War II. 8,100 from Korea, 120 from the Cold War, 1,810 from Vietnam, and 3 from the Gulf War. These courageous Americans dedicated their lives to preserving our freedoms, and we feel that they should never be forgotten. So on Veterans Day at the ceremony, the actual empty chair ceremony will be performed. And I'd like to call your attention to this table. It's small and it's round. And the reason that it's small is because it's emphasizing the frailty of one prisoner alone against his or her will. The tablecloth on it is white, and that symbolizes purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call of arms. The table is set for one, symbolizing the frailty of one prisoner alone against his oppressors. The yellow ribbon on the vase represents yellow ribbons worn on the lapels of thousands who demand with unyielding determination a proper account of those that are still missing. The single rose signifies the blood that they may have shed in sacrifice to ensure the freedom of the beloved United States. This rose reminds us of the family and friends of those missing who keep faith while awaiting their return. The lemon on the bread plate is to remind us of the bitter fate those captured and missing in a foreign land. And there is salt sprinkled on the plate to remind us of the countless tears of those who have never come home and the tears of their families and friends whose grief knows no end. The Bible serves to remind us of the comfort of faith offered to those who face seemingly unsurmountable challenges. And it also reminds us of our country being founded on the principle of one nation under God. The glass is inverted because they can no longer toast. And the candle is reminiscent of the light of hope which lives in our hearts to illuminate their way home, away from their captors, to the open arms of a grateful nation. The American flag reminds us that many may never return and have paid the supreme sacrifice to ensure our freedom. The chair is empty. Our fellow American is still missing.
Boy, that is very moving.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That is incredibly moving.
And this is why we want to have the ceremony that day, to bring to everyone's attention that there are still many POW MIAs that have never been accounted for.
Wow. I don't know how to go beyond that. That is, while you were doing that, all I could think of is the losses my own family sustained in World War II in Korea. And it just reminded me of their sacrifice. My father's cousin and then my own uncle was very badly injured in Korea. And just, it's very moving to remember that. And the older I get, the more I remember what they gave for me to sit here.
And I think that I'm so passionate about it is because my father's brother was MIA, killed in action in World War II, and I was named after him. And about probably 15 to 20 years ago, I did some research because the family never knew what his fate was. And his mom always thought that someday he would come through the door, because when there's no body shipped home, it's even more nerving for the family. And I was able to research through the archives at the Pentagon that his plane was shot down, but he was not killed. He was captured by the Japanese and later put to death by them. So I think it's important to always remember.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very, very moving ceremony and, of course, your story.
And this is why we do this. The citizens of Milford don't want the service that people and sacrifices that people have made, don't want it to be forgotten.
I think, and Al will attest, as Al, and I believe, Joanne, you've been active with him in the
Yes.
50th anniversary
Yes.
of
Right.
Vietnam Veterans Ceremony, that the veterans are aging so much today that pretty soon we're going to have a big gap in people being alive to remember people who served and what it was like to have a family member pass or be injured, or, as you know, not come home. And I think that knowledge gap is going to hurt us in the long run.
Well, after World War II, 7% of the population were veterans. Today, around 0.5% of veterans. So what's happening is the number of veterans, percentage-wise, is dropping relative to the population. So being a veteran sometimes is not such a, that people don't remember it. They don't
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
They don't understand that when you took that oath, your oath is forever. You don't, after you get out, you don't give up the oath. You still have that oath to give the final measure. And a lot of people don't understand what the final measure means. The final measure means that you'll do whatever is required to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And that's something that we can't ever lose. So remembering our veterans helps us establish and remember and recall that commitment, in my opinion.
And I think the young Marine who's going to be part of this ceremony is a great example
Yes,
of that kind of sacrifice.
yes,
I am very impressed by the young man.
yes. Yeah,
He still has that sense of value, that sense of duty, honor, and country
yes, yes.
to the max.
Well, I have a friend whose son is in the Marines currently, who recently returned from a thankfully short tour of duty in South Korea, given what's going on with the missiles in North Korea. I was actually glad that he was returned to the U.S. Recently. But people don't always know, as Al said, with the number dropping, don't always know somebody who's in the service, where I think in earlier days in the 40s and 50s and 60s and even the 70s, pretty much everybody knew a family who had a service member. And today it's getting less and less, and
Yeah.
you don't understand what they do. And especially today when it's all volunteer, I actually view it as a bigger sacrifice than the folks who were drafted. Not that they're not serving the same way, but because they decided on their own to go in, as opposed to being, called into it.
Once you
Think
get,
about that when you see this young man.
once you get there, though, it has nothing to do with whether you got called or drafted. It's not relative to that.
Oh, it's true. In my own family, I remember my father's only cousin was a Marine killed in Saipan in the Pacific Theater. And when my father learned, he immediately went out and enlisted in the Navy to go to the Pacific Theater to basically avenge that loss. And saw quite a bit of action in the final several years of the Pacific Theater. And, you grew up hearing the stories, and that's, not a common occurrence these days. And it's very important to remember what people did, I think. I mean,
Yeah,
one of the
and-
proudest possessions I have is I'm the oldest male left in the family. Is I have Eddie, that was his name, Eddie Rudden's Purple Heart, and the letter from Franklin Roosevelt to his parents are now in my possession about his loss. And I treasure those, and I'm making sure that my kids don't just toss those out when I go, that they're valued family possessions.
I can mention the 8 killed in action.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Recipients.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The first is Rudolph Fino. He's a World War II veteran. He was the first Milfordian that was killed in World War II.
For whom Fino Field is named.
Yes, and we thought it'd be appropriate to award him the first medal. Then we have Jerry Lanzetta, World War II, and his nephew, Alfred, I believe is going to receive that for his uncle, or if Alfred's father, Alfred Sr., is able, he will come up and receive the medal. And for Rudolph Fino, Joe Fino, his cousin, will accept the medal. Edward Bagnoli, World War II, killed in action. His nephew, Edward Bagnoli, also will receive it. Edward Anatelli, World War II, killed in action. That would be Edward Arminio. I think he's a nephew, I'm not sure. I have
Yes,
to-
he is.
Is he? Okay. So I can always check with Joanne on these facts.
That's probably the one that contacted him.
Yes. David St. John, Vietnam, killed in action. I actually graduated high school with Dave. His sister, Linda Mastriani, will receive it for him. Eugene F. Cormier, Vietnam, killed in action. His brother, Edmund Cormier, will receive it. Robert Gritty, Vietnam. His niece, Sheila, will receive it. I had called his brother, who's in Oklahoma, but he couldn't make it up and referred me to his niece, Sheila Anderson. And lastly, Elia Fontecchio is the last killed in action Milfordian.
Yes.
And that was in the Iraqi Freedom Cause. And his mother and father, Dennis and Cindy Fontecchio, will receive it.
And of course, we have the 495 overpass at 109 named after him.
Yeah, and
Some people might be wondering why only 8 We have 59 that we're researching. So these were the first 8 people
Right.
that we were able to get family contacts for. So it will basically, I guess, go in waves. As they get another batch, then the medals
And
will
you
be
can,
awarded.
you can
this every
find
year.
living
So-
relatives.
So everyone eventually that we can find, their family will receive the medal.
And I just want to make sure that, you mentioned his name, but Veterans Agent Tony Pilla has done, I think, an excellent job in looking for the history of these folks.
John Pillar, yes, yep. Yep, he's been very helpful. I was with him this morning, actually, we went over this. And, yeah, these are the list of names, all the Milfordians killed in action. There's probably 62, I think.
There were
something.
66 on the list,
On the
but
list.
only 59 qualified, because if they were killed like on a training mission in the United States or whatever, they don't qualify. There's very specific
Have to be
guidelines.
killed in action or a
Yes.
result of an injury from that, yeah.
Matty Vinziano was a Vietnam vet, did a lot of work to research these as well. And what it involved was going to see Mike Perner. He's in charge of the Records Division, Worcester County, I believe, down in the National Guard building on Beaver Street. And he was able to provide,
Yeah, I see, looking at the records and,
yeah, information and
Looks
then
like a DD 214.
Tagmar form, they call it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then I believe Matty was able to do, Vinziano was able to complete all this from the information, and any information that he couldn't get, he actually researched further, and we were able to send these, all the 8 of them, and get approval for them. So
All
we're
right.
just waiting for the medals to arrive.
yeah. Well, hats off to you guys for organizing this. This is, I think, important to do. Important to, Milford is very good in remembering the veterans. We have the veteran squares all over town. The signs were all upgraded a year or 2 ago and look beautiful. The old wooden ones were falling apart. I think something like this is memorable in the Field of Flags. Now, I do have a question. Can somebody outside of Milford purchase a Field of Flag for a
absolutely,
veteran
fine.
and have it posted there with the
Sure.
other people?
Oh, sure.
Obviously,
I mean,
yes.
personally, I'd love to get one in my father and my uncle's names who are, World War II and Korea
Please do.
veterans,
Yeah, please
respectively.
do.
Just to recognize them.
I have a thought that just came to me. The other night, we were having a meeting of citizens from Milford, and we were focused on this.
Mm.
And one of the persons said, "Wow, this is such a breath of fresh air to focus on something like this
Yeah.
instead of a casino and
Marijuana.
pot
Right.
shops." Oh, really? Really.
Something totally
it just- It lightened up the whole meeting,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I hear from the tiny little beep in the background, we're running out of time, so let's try to sum up. Steve, how long can people sign up for
They
either
can-
renewing a flag or getting a new
They
series of
can do
flags?
this anytime during the year, but it would be best, because our year starts on Veterans Day, to sign up before Veterans Day, and we'll take them right up to the end.
Okay, and they need to go to citizensformilford.com.
.com. There's a form there, that'll give them everything they need to do. Real easy to do.
Okay, and Peter and Joanne, you're going to help with this, you've helped put together this very moving, two ceremonies actually that are very moving, so thank
Yeah,
you for that. And that will be at the end of the parade, and I understand in case of rain, this will be held at the
Italian vets.
Italian Vets Club over on Hayward Field.